hello and a warm welcome to The Good, the Scaz and the Rugby, brought to you by our friends at Vodafone. We're all at home this week. We all managed to connect to the internet from our respective corners of the United Kingdom because we're busy women. I mean, we have a lot going on, and I would like extra special credit for the fact that I have both daffodils and a Vodafone branded ball in the background of my picture. I don't see any daffodils or branded balls in anyone else's background, but Scaz and Mo have both made it. How are we? Let's start with you, Mo. You were at Twickenham
yesterday, yeah.
Good stuff.
Hi.
So you've got for us?
No, it was awesome. Huh?
I said, is that all you've got for us?
This is so how this works is
right.
I talk and then
Should
you
we
talk.
Start again? I'm really confused about
I know you're
who
new
speaks,
and all that.
How much we speak, how much you want us to add. I've gone, guys. I can't. Do we start again or what?
You.
Scaz, that was the funniest thing you've ever said online. Well done. Also,
Okay.
Alma, sorry, just to go. You've also got the red branding, and I really appreciated that. I think you should mention that bit too. For those that can't see, you know, devil's in the detail. There we are.
Alma is wearing red. That was a request for all of us to do, but I was the only one who got the memo. Thanks.
My only red is Gloucester Heartbury,
Oh,
and if I jumped on that, I think you'd have all torn me a new one already, and I think that's going to happen anyway, so here we are.
I'm bent over as well because I think I'm wearing the same jumper as...
Oh, Adidas branding is always welcome.
yeah, you guys are fully branded. We would like to welcome, on that note, the guest to this episode, Hollie Davidson. Thank you for dropping by, Hollie. It's good to see that you got the memo for the dress code.
Yes, red and not the same as any of the hosts.
Yeah, both of those. That's really great. Now, the reason we have Hollie on today, obviously, just absolutely smashing through so many glass ceilings. Love that. For anyone who doesn't know Hollie, she, in the last year alone, has taken charge of her first Tier 1 men's test fixture, first woman to do so, all-woman refereeing team behind her as well. She's been in the middle for the Challenge Cup, the URC, the Allianz Prem 15s, not to mention the Women's Six Nations, the Grand Slam decided between England and France. And then just because, you know, the list isn't long enough already, 3 big finals, the Commonwealth Games 7s, Rugby World Cup 7s in Cape Town, and then this must be a record. Surely no one has done 2 Rugby World Cup finals in 62 days, because she was then the person who refereed Rugby World Cup 21's final down in NZ. Is that officially a record?
I'm not sure, to be honest. Maybe. Can look into it, yeah.
It's got to be. Has to
Yeah.
be.
We're claiming it right now. Welcome to the show, Hollie.
Thank you, excited to be here.
Is that all you've got for us?
I know, well, my favourite episode was last week, Mo, when I tuned in and I said, she's looking a bit peaky.
Oh no, don't. Someone sent me, one of the girls just sent me a little recording and was like, adding so much value here, mate. And I was just like, oh my God. Nice
Hollie,
to know that you listen though.
Yeah, before you came on, Mo said, guys, can we just quickly have a chat before Hollie comes on? Am I going to be the bad guy in this episode?
Basically, like every other episode.
Are we just going to talk about how Mo isn't fun to referee? Is that what we're doing here today, just to be clear?
We can go down that line.
No, I'm joking.
No, Mo is brilliant referee.
You are a former player, which is, I feel like it's an interesting point to start on because you and Mo played, well, you played Scrum-half as well. Is that the ideal position from which to launch a refereeing career because you always know better anyway?
Yeah, at least we think we do. You always follow the ball around and you've always got something to say. But I think when you then move into, I suppose, refereeing, you have a lot more empathy for kind of what's going on the field because you've been in and amongst sort of the mix of the 80 minutes normally. So yeah, it gives you a good eye, but very much a different perspective when you pick up the whistle.
What is
Now-
the difference? Sorry,
Okay,
I'm really
go for
intrigued
it.
by that.
So I suppose when you play, you can understand where the other team is coming from, and it's a very emotive situation. I suppose as a referee, you're there to facilitate a game, and when I first started, I thought my job was to get absolutely every single infringement going, and I soon realised that actually ruins a game of rugby. So I suppose the big thing is, how do I allow the game to keep flowing but get what really matters? And to a lot of players, the big things that referees miss is what means something to them. But in the grand scheme of things, it might be really technical or might be really small, where a referee might just say, play on.
That's why I never get rolling away penalties. It all makes sense now.
You do.
Yeah, that makes sense. You've changed the game for me. I'm going to shut up now. Perfect. Job here's done.
15 years of playing, Mo, and now all of a sudden the penny's dropped, is it?
It has. Because that for me means the most, because I'm like, you're slowing my ball down. But actually, if it's not really slowing it down enough to be like a penalty, that makes sense. Like, genuinely, that actually makes sense to me. I'm not even joking. And I'm not trying to suck up or anything like that. I'm just being honest.
Basically, the reason we organised for Hollie Davidson to be on here is because Mo said, you know what, she is really powerful. We need to just make sure we keep her nice and warm and turn her into our friend. Turns out she listens to the pod, Mo, and you had no hope anyway.
Yeah. I thought you were picking me up then.
Straight under the bus.
So good.
No,
I think my connection's going, Alma. Sorry.
that's a best excuse, especially since we're remote. I love that for you. Now, Hollie, there was a lot happening at Murrayfield this weekend, just gone. Pics of some of the pioneers of Scottish rugby. Tell us more.
Yeah, we got invited along. So 30 years ago, Scotland women played their first international against Ireland here in Edinburgh. And so for that 30th anniversary, the players and coaching staff and management of that team were invited along to the Scotland-Wales game. And then I was invited along for doing the World Cup final. So yeah, it was a great event. Kind of just shows where the game's come from. And I wouldn't be even in this position if those women hadn't gone out there and played that game. So always very thankful to understand where, our roots are. And yeah, it was just full of lots of laughter, lots of alcohol.
How was your curtsy? I was catching up with some of the Scottish girls today, obviously at Loughborough, and they said obviously Princess Anne was in the box, and that requires an official royal welcome or whatever we call it. How did the curtsy go down?
Yeah, we got sent a full brief before we were introduced. And it'd be my mum. So my mum and my partner were my guests at the event, and it was my mum's birthday a couple of days prior. And Princess Anne obviously gets sent a brief, so the first thing she said to my mum was happy birthday. And so my mum, the formalities went right over her head, and she just replied saying, "Thank you, Anne." And I was like, and then Helen did the whole curtsy, head bow and handshake all at the same time, which was cracking to see. And she got a bit flustered, but it was great. You don't often get an opportunity like that to meet royalty, and she's so down to earth. It was very, very cool.
That's awesome. As if she said happy birthday. Love that.
My mum's absolutely loving it. I don't think a birthday is ever going to top, any celebrations is going to top that.
So we can help your mum with the message. I mean, we've got the Princess Royal's son-in-law on a WhatsApp group. Is there anything we need to just relay via Vanilla Mike?
No, I don't think anything, honestly, I don't think anything can top that day for her.
And your curtsy game, is it strong?
I'd like to think so. I practiced a few times the night before.
I was, again, comparing notes earlier, and when I went to get my MBE, you have to curtsy then. So you walk in front on, curtsy, but then you have to reverse out. So you literally backwards, you're walking backwards, and then you're, for whatever reason, and I hope this happens to everyone, but your legs are just in the wrong place. And I ended up 2 foot together, basically like doing a little like bob. And my mum, who was stood on the side watching it, she was wetting herself. She was like, what was that? I was like, I don't know. It was because I was reversing. It's so hard.
Sorry, I just want to pick up the point that you were comparing notes about courtesying to the royals. Like, this isn't normal conversation.
The fact that you bunny hopped in front of the Queen is literally, I mean, that's a claim to fame moment right there.
Maybe it's because you had heels on, Scazzy.
I don't know what it was, but it was chaos.
So, Hollie, tell us, for those who didn't follow your playing career as closely as your refereeing career, tell us more about where that started. You played Edinburgh University, Murrayfield Wanderers, right? And you were pretty close.
Yeah, so I started like when I was about 15 playing regional Scotland stuff, and then moved down to Edinburgh University, where one of the opposition coaches was the head coach at Edinburgh. So Claire Cruikshank used to coach Edinburgh region, and she picked me up when I came to university. And just through there, started played 20s, and then I got called up to the seniors setup when I was 19, and I was named on the bench to get my first cap at Scrum-halves. And then we used to do these training games on a Friday evening, which was called Scotland Select. And I got a stinger in my shoulder that Friday evening, and we were supposed to fly the following Monday. And it was Karen Finlay was our coach at the time, and she phoned me on the Sunday just saying, you know, it's too much of a risk to take you. You're going to get cut from the squad. And at that point, at like 18, 19, I thought my whole world was like over. I'd all kind of gone out to media, everyone kind of got in contact saying congratulations. And then it was the same shoulder that just repeated injuries, and yeah, I just never made it back. And you know, I can probably reflect now and say that, did I try not hard enough to get back in? Maybe not. But yeah, it hurt at the time, and that's your ambitions, to get cap for your country. And it's just something that I suppose never worked out for me.
Everything happens for a reason, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly that. I think I really struggled with it for a while, because I think I was always that person that had potential. Do you know, I was a youngster that potentially made the cap, and I was always pretty good at sport when I was growing up. And then I was always that person that probably never fulfilled that potential. And I was probably scared when I started refereeing that could be the case as well. When I moved quite quickly through the ranks, I was like, oh gosh, it's going to happen again. And it was probably a fear I had in the back of my head. And I actually remember doing my first URC game, and it was during COVID, so we did all the travelling on our own. And I was staying in Dublin, and I was driving back after the game, and just kind of, it felt like a huge weight had been lifted off my shoulders, because I was like, that potential has actually kind of come to fruition. And yeah, I was just like driving back up to Dublin crying on my own, like, do you know, you've actually kind of done it. So now I'm kind of settled with where I am, because I can accept that this is my journey now. But it probably took me a long time to accept that my playing days were over.
That is so much pressure. I just feel so sorry for the amount that obviously that weight that you were carrying. How long was that you were walking around with that kind of, it's almost like, I mean, it's the fear of succeeding almost, or succeeding and then just not getting the nod.
Yeah, it's exactly that. When I got contracted with Scottish Rugby, I was kind of going about doing my own thing in my own little world, because there was no pressure. And then people start noticing you a little bit and say, oh, you know, you could do big things here if you want to. And I was like, well, I want to, yes, but what happens if they don't happen? And then I think as steps were made, I then was like, right, and I know that this is my journey. I'm going to put my absolute everything into this, because this is my last crack in rugby, I suppose. And thankfully it's kind of paid off.
Would you ever swap it if you knew you were going to become an amazing 9 for Scotland, go to the World Cup, play for however many years playing, etc. Now knowing what you know, obviously, with where you are and how successful you've been from a referee point of view? Or is that too savage a question?
No, I think, look, I love rugby. I know some people, especially when you become a referee, you end up watching the game as a referee, and don't get me wrong, I still do that. But I love the game of rugby, and I think when you're involved in it, you always want to get, you know, you want to be the best that you can be. You want to be capped. And yes, now I can say that, you know, I'm fine with it. But younger, of course, I would have 100% switched it to be a player, to be a Scotland international.
But you could have also just become a coach. I mean, refereeing, it's not easy,
Helga.
and
Sell
you
it.
just get. No, but I'm always fascinated by this, because I think referees are absolute superheroes, because it's literally the game wouldn't be able to function without amazing referees. And I'm really passionate and outspoken about the fact that we only raise the standard of refereeing by celebrating referees. Do I have the guts and the confidence to become one? No.
Yeah. I think when I started, it was probably at a time when women's rugby was kind of just kicking off in the presence of social media. So I think when I started, I was that person that would watch referees or be in the stand and absolute shout abuse at them. And I was just like, how are they missing like so much? And I kind of was like, well, if I'm going to be like that, I need to put my money where my mouth is. And so I started reffing, and my God, did I find out that it's actually not as easy as I thought it was. But I think then it's probably, like you said, especially now with the coverage on social media, and a lot of people are like armchair critics of refs, so it can be tough at times. But I suppose that's part and parcel of the job. Yeah.
I think it's a really interesting one. So at uni, there's a girl that's coming up through the ranks, like English girl, Emily Hope, who's brilliant. And she's doing a project called Humanising the Referee for that reason entirely, because everyone like basically sees them as this object in the middle. And like you said, social media is mad, like people go in at them all the time, like referees, but actually like they're people, and yeah, they're going to miss stuff. And like you said, sometimes you choose to miss stuff, and that's just to keep the game flowing, and that's like an active decision. And I think it's such an interesting one that people don't really see that side of it, which is why, to your point, Alma, it's so important that we talk about it and we actually celebrate, like you said.
One of my biggest things as well with referees is always like, we're professional rugby players, right? So do we ever go out onto the field and never make a single mistake? Can't remember a time. Mo, you're probably thinking
You don't,
every week.
to be fair. Scaz, you actually don't.
No, but do you know what I mean? Like, and
Carry
yet
on.
we expect complete perfection from the referee, and it's completely unrealistic. Like, when you watch Six Nations on the TV, you don't even realise something's happened that they've seen, and you just think they're doing such a brilliant job. And I know obviously everything's getting better. Just a separate side note, can we arrange a social experiment where Mo has to referee a game? Because I think, to your point earlier, Holly, when you said until you do it, you just kind of that armchair critic, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong. We need to get Mo in the middle for a game that is filmed, and we all sit on the sideline on a sofa watching.
Okay, 2 points here that I'd like to raise.
Can Holly, can you form a team made up of referees to be on the one side?
Okay, two points I'd like to raise. 2 points I'd like to raise. I can't even remember them now. Oh my God, I can't even remember. Here we go again. And I'm not even joking. Here we go again. Flipping heck, what's wrong with my memory? Yeah, my philosophy is.
What's your
Oh my
coaching
God.
philosophy, Mo?
Oh, first point. Actually, this was a big one. First point. This is actually quite a humbling experience for me. I'm not going to lie. Like, just sat here being like, okay, I understand, and I feel like a lot is resonating. Second point. I'm not that bad. Like, I ask for things, but I'm not that bad, am I? I knew this was going to come at me.
No, you're not that. But the thing is, I suppose, like, you're very much a player that knows her trade, knows the game of rugby inside out. And I think that's good, because I think at times that challenges us as referees to be better. Because you'll call out if we blatantly have made a mistake.
Careful here, Holly. Careful.
Or if there's an opinion. But like I said before, it's sometimes you probably in times we all know that rugby is very grey. There's no real black and white, and sometimes a referee will choose not to give something just to yeah, add a little bit of continuity, really.
Okay, we need to do this now. So, what's Mo like to ref? Give us a story. Is there an anecdote that perfectly illustrates what Mo is like out there in the middle?
Probably.
And then Emily. So we'll get to.
Can we go Emily first?
Simba's perfect. Okay, give us Emily first.
Who is Emily, by the way? That's weird. It's because we're talking to a ref, so we have to full name her.
Yeah, full name.
Emily.
Full formal
The
name.
match official is going to give us a rating on Emily's behaviour on the pitch now.
To be fair, I think because Scaz is out in that 13 channel, you don't really see her too much, so it's good.
She ain't got a clue what's going on, that's the issue.
Whereas Mo's probably like the little Scrappy-Doo that follows you around.
We run the same lines, it's because you're obviously a scrum-half as well, so...
Scrappy-Doo is the perfect explanation of what Mo is.
I've actually become way better, it's been something I've really worked on. I mean, referees might not say that, but I think they're okay with me at the minute.
On the topic of Mo just being a little outspoken, can we tell the story about your response to the guy who stirred the pot and said his pal had refereed you?
Oh, it's Scazzy gone.
Was this at the dinner? When was this?
So I got this text message from Leon Lloyd, who looks after me, the day after the dinner. And he's done a few bits with Mo as well. So he was chatting to one of the Allianz guys and was trying to introduce her, blah, blah, blah. He put, one of the guys I was with at the end is quite senior at Allianz, and I was saying how nice she is, referring to Mo. He's also a referee and wanted to meet her, so I introduced them. And jokingly said he's refereed her before and said she was a bit chopsy. He didn't actually say that, but I thought it would be an icebreaker. She turned around and said, "I'm only chopsy when the ref is shite, so you must have been having a terrible game," and walked off. Honestly.
Oh, like, honestly, I think I've got like another level when I drink or something, I'm not sure. Anyway.
This was the night before the Rachel Burford recording, for anyone who doesn't have reference of what we're talking about. Mo was on a roll. So tell us about the conversations before the game. Hollie, like how much pre-match chat is there to tee things up or just kind of prepare the soil nicely before we all go out there? For someone who hasn't been in that space, explain it like you're talking to a 5-year-old.
Yeah, so pre-game we'll go into the teams, and I suppose the idea is that they can kind of suss you out a little bit and you suss them, and you might try and say, you know, this is what you're looking for. But I suppose as my career has gone on, I feel like players, if they want to arse around, are going to still arse around no matter what you say. So I go in and ask if they have any questions for me, and if they don't, then I leave.
How is there a comparison here between, because you've ref tons of men's rugby as well, is there a comparison here between the two? Do men's teams behave differently when you do the briefing?
No, to be honest, not really. They might try and say, this is what we're looking to do. But it's the exact same in the women's game. Sometimes as you're leaving, you might get asked a few technical questions from coaches to see if your knowledge is maybe up to scratch. But I kind of relish in those situations, and I kind of just am like, bring it on if you want to have a technical conversation.
What sort of things would they ask in that?
It'll just be, for example, like maybe things that they've seen in preview around line out to maul, what they do, what my interpretation is of breaking offside lines through mauls, etc. And they're just really looking for my opinion on stuff. But for me, I always think those conversations are more like game playing to see, like, are you going to crack under questioning? So yeah, I quite enjoyed them, to be honest.
I don't know. Sometimes we ask questions because like that's something we've seen. So like, for example, like say someone's boring in all the time, and it's like, if you have that conversation, does that then put that in your head? Like, would you be more likely to look for that at scrum time, for example? Like, would it be that way or no?
Not necessarily, because I suppose we've done our prep as well going into the game. And you never want to go in with a preconceived idea, especially maybe if another team has told you what they're seeing. So you can kind of say, yeah, I'll look out for it. But I always think if a team can kind of concentrate on what they're doing, it makes looking at someone else much easier than maybe flipping the focus to the other person.
Is that the standard response when you actually are like, I'm actually not really listening to you, I'll just do my own thing? Yeah, I'll look out for it.
Yeah.
Good to know.
A polite way of saying shut up and focus on your job and I'll do mine.
Basically, yeah.
Appeasing. Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
Appease people.
I think that's completely fair.
And let's chat about, I was asking about the men's and women's comparison because it is just really interesting to see the women's game. And obviously it is different in certain kind of really concrete ways. I mean, the ball in play time is insane. And there are other ways in which structurally it just functions a little differently. And we've seen Wayne Barnes recently reffing in the Allianz Prem 15s, which is, I mean, at the same time, it's amazing, but some critics would look at that and go, oh, well, where are the opportunities for people coming through the structures? But it's great to see that level of credibility. And I'm sure the players just love the fact that they have the same person who's just reffed, you know, a test match at, you know, Twickenham or Murrayfield over the weekend.
Absolutely. It was class sort of seeing him. It was the Bristol Harlequins game, I think, just after Christmas. And I think it's great, you know, I believe that RFU are making all of their pro men, male and female referees go into the AP15s, which I think is really good. I agree there has to be opportunities there, but I suppose we're there to facilitate a game. And for me, it's just about those 30 players. And as long as opportunities are there and people are getting them on merit, then for me, there's no reason why it can't also be a mixed gender league. You know, I'm hoping to push into men's stuff and vice versa. Sometimes a male's, you know, pinnacle might be to referee a World Cup, a Women's World Cup. So sometimes I don't think we should be putting like stoppers on people going across both male and the female game.
Would you ever want a crack at the Allianz Prem 15s?
So I've done 2 games years ago. I came down and did Bristol Wasps, and then I did DMP versus Waterloo, in which was one of the worst games I've ever been involved in. Katie Daly-McLean was playing, and she can back me up on this. It was a rainstorm from the evening before through the entire game. It ended 0-0.
Where was it? At DMP?
It was at Waterloo.
Oh my day! Is that your like last experience? You're like, I'm done. I'm not contractually obliged to be here right now. Thank you. Bye.
Exactly that. I was like, that is enough. Thank you very much. Bye bye.
What about now? We play in fancy stadiums.
Yeah, like it's cool. I think cross-border stuff is really good. It keeps it fresh. And it would be cool, you know, like coming to AP or going out to France to do some of their stuff. I know that Joy just refereed as well in the new like Celtic competition between like the Thistles, the Welsh Development and the Irish provinces. So there's opportunities there for cross-border. It would be, yeah, cool to get involved.
I hope I'm on comms for that game.
And then?
I'm going to be like, she's missed that one on purpose because... continuity. I'm playing.
It's such a small industry. If Mo's not going to be on the pitch giving you chopsy feedback, she's going to be on comms. I mean, you literally can't escape her.
Literally both angles going to get stuck in.
Tell me about riffing Helen, your partner. Has that happened?
Thankfully not, no. I got asked this the other day if I'd ever refereed her, but no. By the time that she went out to France and then down to England, I'd just started. So we played together, but I've never refereed her.
And Scaz is just sitting there smiling, like diplomatically, just keeping a really
because I think
face.
it would be great to have Hollie ref some of our games, but I don't know whether... Would you be allowed? I don't know. What are the... Or would you just have to declare it? I'm not sure how it would work, but I feel like, yeah, we probably would never get Hollie as a ref for that reason, maybe.
Yeah, I think that's probably the case. I think it's one of those things where you don't want to you don't want to appear biased in a situation, so you probably end up penalising Helen off the park.
Or you look at you've seen that on your list of games, and you're like, oh no, sorry, I can't do that one. Absolutely not. It's not for me, that one.
For those who don't know this, so Helen Nelson, your partner, is an international rugby player. How much do you talk about rugby when you are at home, and how clearly do you have to draw the line between giving each other feedback?
Yeah, it's a tough balance. Like, we talk about rugby, like we love rugby, but she's great. You know, like, I'll come off of a game and I know if it's probably gone well or if it's not gone well, and she's very good at kind of keeping her opinions. She is very much then my partner in that situation, and she's there to support me, and vice versa. I like to think I'm just there to support her as the player and the partner, not give her critique on what she could have done here or what she could have done there. So it's tough at times, but yeah, once the rugby kind of stops, then that's it. We have a lot of other things in common that doesn't take up too much of our time.
So now you ref, you're a match official over the weekend. You do like really important heavy lifting, high pressure work there. What does the rest of the week look like? Because you used to have a day job, and I actually still want to talk about that, like hotshot finance job. Now, like, how much review? I know that you guys leave the pitch and you go do an immediate, hot review, what is that called? But then how much of that also happens during the week?
Yeah, so you would have, like, on Mondays, if you've had a game at the weekend, then you would review that with your coach. And then on Tuesdays, then that's when you review it with it's called a performance reviewer. That's someone that sits independent out with your own union who critiques your performance. And then there's obviously physical training, mental training, and then you start your preview for the following weekend as well. And then at the moment during Six Nations, we go in with Scotland men, the under-20s, and then we go in with the women during their campaign seasons. And then obviously Glasgow and Edinburgh is the pro teams.
Do you have a captain's run?
Yeah, just practice my signals in my bedroom. No, I absolutely do not do that.
I'm just thinking about this because you guys talk about your refereeing team. I mean, you have your assistant referees and the TMO, and all of you like bond, and you have your little meetings yourselves. Obviously, I'm now giving away the fact that in my day job, I have reviewed a lot of footage of Hollie doing referee things, but I have also wondered how much of the week actually looks like that, and how much of the admin there is that goes along with it.
Yeah, like, I suppose when we're away with a Scottish team, it's really easy because I spend a lot of the time with the boys during the week. So the 3 other contracted refs, we know how each other work, we do our reviews together, so you're always bouncing your opinion off of someone else, so you become quite aligned in your thinking. When we go away for Six Nations, you work with a team that everyone is from different nations, so my big thing a lot of the time actually is just trying to build a little bit of cohesion and teamwork, not necessarily alignment, because I feel during that time, that's my time to be the captain. I need to kind of steer that ship, and it's actually just bringing the best out of those people when we are together, when we're away.
How would you begin to do that?
For me, it just starts with like conversations early. Probably like 3-4 years ago, we started as a sort of international female match official panel that we hadn't spent any time together. We went through 2 years of COVID that you would turn up, you'd be in a hotel room to get like hotel rooms, then you'd go out to do the game, and then you'd fly home. So it was quite the interactions were quite linear. It wasn't a lot of team building. Whereas in the last sort of year and during World Cup, Alhambra Nevis, our boss, has done so much with just building that team culture, actually allowing us to just get to know one another, which I think that's when you get the best out of folk, when you actually know them, what makes them tick, how to engage with them. So for me, it's actually just keeping in contact throughout the year so that when you do come to have your games, there's that commonality already between you.
Do you find there's a language barrier sometimes? Because obviously with Six Nations, there's like, that must be quite difficult to get to know people, have that cohesion, but also like have that communication. Do you speak another language?
No, and I know that there is a huge drive for refs nowadays to be able to speak a different language. And so probably my like middle ground at the moment is, if I know that I'm working with a team that their first language isn't English, then I just try and make a real conscious effort to like slow my speaking down, use really literal terms of like English to, let's say, French words, so it means the conversations are much easier, and that they actually have full understanding of what I'm trying to say. And then I'll always just ask what the equivalent is in that language, so then I'm trying to build up my repertoire of like, even I can't string sentences together, but little words I've kind of maybe got here and there.
Like advantage. Perfect.
Yeah, and then you just say it again in English, like advantage.
Can I go back to something you said as well, because I would love to know what this looks like. But you said earlier that part of your week consists of mental training.
Yeah.
What is that, and what does it look like? Like, how do you do that?
Yeah, so we have a sports psychologist here in Scotland that works with us, and we'll look at projects with him individually. And then we also, when we were away in New Zealand, we had another mental skills coach that we worked with, a guy called Tom Gretton, and he was fantastic because I probably, you know what it's like when you do some of the Six Nations games, especially, the England versus France, and especially that game in Bayonne. Like, I probably really struggled coming out the back of that. It was the most hostile environment I've probably ever experienced. And then when I got announced to do the final in New Zealand, I knew that potentially that was going to be another hostile environment. So we did some sort of, not even just mental training, but just had conversations on how I would cope with it. So I got to sit in the stands for the semi-final, knowing at this point that I was doing the final the next week. And there was a woman sat like 3 seats along from us, and Joy was doing the France-New Zealand game. And she was absolutely screaming at every decision that Joy made against New Zealand. Whether right or wrong, she was going buck mad. And so I told Tom this during the week, because the nerves were starting to build, and he was like, well, how can we manage them going into the week? And so I told him this story, and so we named this woman Helga. And any time that the Boo Bird started on game day, I just thought of Helga, and it kind of made me smile, because I was like, there's 40,000 people probably booing me, but I just need to have confidence in myself that I know what I'm talking about, and Helga does not. So that's just having, for me, it was ways and means to find clarity on pitch, using past experiences and turning them into, I suppose, coping mechanisms to find it easier out there when times got tough.
That's really interesting. That sounds like the psychology around dealing with anxiety, and the anxiety voice that you have in your brain, and making sure that you realize that that is a voice. It's a perspective. It's naming it and kind of positioning it away from who you are and what is objectively happening to you. It's one perspective on it. Is that basically the same thing?
Yeah, absolutely. Earlier in the competition, like, I was struggling to sleep. There was a lot of like thoughts going through my head, like that essentially what anxiety and pressure was causing. And Tom was like, I want you to, any small thing, he was like, I want you to write it down. And like, I've kept them in my notes. I've not actually gone back and looked at them, but it actually allowed me to park all the thoughts that I had during that moment that was stopping me from sleeping, park them, and then I was actually able to sleep, because it was me almost dealing with those voices that were causing me chaos.
Did you physically write it or on notes?
Yeah, both.
Changes
both.
the game.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I've never thought of doing that. Sometimes I lie awake between like 2 and 3 in the morning, and I have these obviously insanely inane conversations with myself about stuff that I'm like thinking about.
Like what?
Oh no, I'm making to-do lists. I'm literally paging through my life, just about all the things that need to be done. And this just makes so much sense. Just actually write it down.
Have you never done that before, Elma?
Yeah.
No.
That's wild.
I just lie there obsessing. Yeah. Well, look at this.
This is going to change your
love
life.
this. I'm growing.
Look, we're all growing. Scaz, what are you growing with? Because Alma and I revolutionised, so give us what you're learning.
Always
Curtsying
learning.
doesn't count.
Curtsying, yeah, I was going to say, unfortunately, I have no use for the curtsy skill, but this is a really useful one. So how is refereeing Rugby World Cup 7s different from refereeing Rugby World Cup 21? I mean, outside of Helga being in New Zealand. The one obviously is just, I mean, like a ton more running, quicker, shorter.
Yeah, much shorter. I suppose in sevens, like, it's quick. It's kind of before you start, it's over. Do you know? It's one of those situations where it's literally 14 minutes go past in the blink of an eye. But one thing that probably the Cape Town final was unbelievable. It actually, I think, was such a showcase of like women's sevens. Sometimes finals can be a bit tetchy and people don't play. It's quite defensive, but they just went hell for leather, and it was unbelievable. And how does that differ to New Zealand? To be honest, I don't think any of us anticipated New Zealand to be what it was. From my perspective anyway, I think we all knew that the Kiwis loved rugby, but I don't know if we thought that they would turn out for women's rugby. And then when we walked out on the day of the final to Eden Park, and there was like fans coming down early on to watch the France-Canada game, and then walking out onto the actual pitch for the final, and you can see it was like a sellout, and they were just going crazy. It was like, this is unbelievable. And I think I looked around, I remember about 65 minutes, the New Zealand hooker or prop got subbed off. And she just looks up at the camera and she literally just gives like a big piece. She was just absolutely loving life. And I was like, this is class. Like, this is what it's about. Like, she's just having an absolute ball. And sometimes it takes away from the serious like pressure that those environments can create. Yeah, it was just unbelievable.
Would you say it's career highlight for you?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Like, hands down.
Yeah, like Emma said at the start, I think sometimes as a ref you could have 99% all correct decisions, and there's that 1% that will be the 1% that everyone remembers. And you know, there's things coming out of that game that everyone has their opinion on, but I can kind of walk off and be like, that's one of the best experiences of my refereeing career to date, for sure.
Are you talking about criticism around the red card?
Yes.
We obviously have to go there, because that is, as a referee, I mean, does your heart just plummet when something like that happens? And I mean, your brain logically is telling you this is the right decision, but there's a voice somewhere in your head that's going, this is a Rugby World Cup final. And you do not, I mean, no one wants to be the person who hands out a red card during a big game like that.
No, absolutely not. And I remember when the ball was going back and forth in the 22, my assistant Aurelie, she'd come in for it, like she'd pressed her comms to come in for something. But the crowd was so loud that all it felt like was someone holding a speaker to my ear, like shoving white noise into it. Like, you couldn't hear her whatsoever. So then the ball goes out of play, and that's when Ben Whitehouse comes in, the TMO. And at that point, like, you could kind of see the New Zealand winger down on the ground, not in the best state. And when he said that we needed to look at the head contact, it is kind of that sinking feeling, knowing that this doesn't look great.
I had the same sinking feeling when I watched it on the big screen, because it did not look great. I was just going to say, I didn't realise there was heat that came from that decision. If I'm honest, I certainly didn't see any, because I think obviously we all love Liz to pieces and obviously know what she's like as a person, etc. But I don't think many people could disagree with that. And obviously when we watched it on the big screen, I hadn't seen it in real life. When we watched it on the big screen, a few swear words went on in my head, because you obviously hope that it's never going to be that, but I think naturally the likelihood was that it was going to be. But yeah, I didn't realise that there was some heat that came from that, because, you know, as somebody playing the game in the other shirt who obviously did not want that to be a red card at all, for me it obviously was.
And I guess that's the thing that we need to celebrate: referees, match officials, everyone who basically does that job for. is the fact that even the players on the pitch who were most disadvantaged by that being the outcome of that moment of contact can recognise that it was the right decision at the right time. But you're the one who has to do that.
Yeah, and it's probably, I know that that's my job, and my job in that situation is to, you know, uphold player safety as much as possible. And you never want it to happen in you don't want it to happen in any game, never mind a World Cup final. So it was just trying to sort of reset after that and not allow it to then, probably that happened at like 15 minutes or something, then not impact the next sort of like 65 minutes of the game. You just have to almost like put a block in and say, right, that's happened, and then we deal with the next sort of 65 minutes of the fixture.
Do you find that, like, when you're reffing, you said earlier, like, about when you're a player, it's so empathetic and stuff like that, and, like, obviously you get so drawn into what's going on, the emotion of it, like, the crowd, everything like that. Like, as a ref, is it literally, like, bang, like, job to do, so process-driven?
I think in an ideal world, yes. I think it would be so easy to just say this is X, Y, Z, but I think that's what makes our sport different from others, is that sometimes you can, and that's why I suppose when it comes to foul play, there is that mitigation in it to try and empathise with what the players are trying to do. And maybe in some situations they've just got it wrong. And I do think that's where our sport is good, that you can understand some situations, and whether there's, for example, a player that as a 9 might want a not rolling, but someone has just latched on top of them and they can't get out, then that's where we can show a little bit of empathy to say, no, I'm not going to penalise this player.
Their knees drop, they're pinning them in, stop asking for it. Yeah, I get you.
Yeah.
When the boys had Wayne Barnes on, they were speaking a lot around like technology, and Wayne, I think, spoke around how actually, obviously, football, they go to VAR, it's a piece of technology, and it's like, oh no, the computer's decided, if it's a computer, I don't know what it is, the computer's decided it's either offside or not offside, and therefore the referee doesn't cop any heat from that, or hasn't had to make a subjective decision. I don't know what my question is, but like, I guess, do you support that, or do you think rugby's got too many moving parts that that's even a possibility? What are you laughing at, Natasha?
The computer decided. No. I can't believe you kept a straight face. I was literally sat here like, the computer. So obviously the computer's decided.
I didn't even realise what I was saying.
Are you okay, Han? Oh God. Yeah, so what was your question, Scaz? Sorry.
No.
If computers saying yes or no is good.
Yeah, do you basically want Hawkeye, like in tennis?
Yeah.
It just goes, done.
Yeah.
Not a try.
Yeah.
Boof, let's move on.
I genuinely think some advancements in technology would be good. So, for example, like, I remember the Maro Toji offside onside from, if it was a try, yes or no, it was a couple of seasons ago. Stuff like that would be great to just say, well, where's the back foot of the ruck? Are they onside? Are they offside? Would be very clear and obvious. Yeah, exactly. Because then there's a line drawn. For stuff like, yeah, probably foul play, it can't be used. I suppose as well, the other thing is when the TMOs are kind of doing their job, they're not in full control of the images that they see and the replays that they see. So I'd like, that would be good as well, that it was almost centralised the way that they have full access to all of the camera angles and they can control the replays and the bouncing back and forth. Because then it is actually them making the decision, not being to the, I suppose, control of directors.
How is that still a thing? Because obviously there's the James Lowe at the weekend. There's always various contentious camera angles that don't get shown in other European places. Like, how is that?
Southern Hemisphere.
Well, hey, look, wherever. Depends who the host broadcaster is. But, like, things like that, it blows my mind that somebody else has control over that.
Yeah, and I was so unaware of it until I got into this. I was like, I thought the TMO would sit there with all these screens and they would be in control of the rocking and rolling and what replays they wanted to choose. When we were down in New Zealand, we worked with Hawkeye. They had a technician sat next to them so they could see everything. But like you said, TMOs are very much at the mercy of what the director shows them. So you'll have your headset on and you'll be saying, I want to see that angle or I want to see that angle. But then it's kind of up to them what they're showing on the TV broadcast and what they may keep behind or they want to show you.
Yeah, Mo's face, I mean, the shock that is exhibited on Mo, like a world has just opened.
Honestly, time and time again today, thank you, Hollie Davidson. That's mad though. Like,
yeah, it's crazy.
Is that something that's on the radar though for
I thought...
something to be changed? Sorry, Mo. Because, in my opinion, the James Mo one at the weekend, that cannot be a reason that a team loses a game or whatever, because the angle is there. It's just, and we're kind of reading into this, but somebody in the truck who's potentially wearing an Irish shirt hasn't decided.
We can all cheers a Guinness
too. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I obviously don't know everything about it, but that's how it seems. But that surely can't continue, surely. I mean, I appreciate this isn't part of your job or anything.
Yeah. The point that I did want to make on social media over the weekend on that decision, because someone said, oh, you could lose a Rugby World Cup final on this. And there's a very, very important distinction between the Six Nations and something like a Rugby World Cup. The Rugby World Cup host broadcast services are not run by the home country's partner broadcaster. The broadcast services there is centralised. And so that's very different. At a Rugby World Cup, you'd never have, you probably would be very unlikely to have the person who makes those decisions, those angle decisions and what the TMO visually sees won't necessarily be influenced by a home broadcasting service. But if you're playing a test series in South Africa, then it's going to be the South African broadcaster, and someone in a truck who's going to have access to 17 or 18 angles on something will have the decision on which sequence the TMO sees that in.
My mum is going to go mental when she hears this. That's all I can think about right now. Imagine Sally Ann, she's going to kick off.
She's going to become an EVS operator. She's going to go sit in that van and fix it.
Sally Hunt 301 on Twitter is getting all over this, I tell you now.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. A little bit more longevity than maybe the refereeing. So I suppose France were kind of the first people. Well, Vern Cotter took Jacko into the Fiji setup as a referee kind of consultant, and then Jerome, once he retired, went into the French, and Romain Poit is in with Toulon, which I suppose gives a real different perspective on what we probably are looking at. And we know that the laws of the game change so regularly that probably someone to just keep the players up to speed with what's happening, I think is really good. I also, we go in with Scotland men, 20s and the women, and I see my job as to, how do the Scotland women find that grey, I suppose? What are we being told to look for? So what are areas that referees are going to be hot on? And how can they maybe just twist the rules or the laws to benefit, like you said, their attack or their defence?
On that point, we have Coxie in a lot during, obviously, Six Nations camps, pre-World Cup stuff. Sarah Cox, English referee. She's brilliant for exactly that. Obviously, one, she referees our live games, and like the bits the forwards do and scrums and lineouts and mauls and stuff. But also actually is there as a sounding board as well. So she gives a penalty for something. Like we can then ask essentially why, what she's seen, what does that look like, what area of the field is that, why would you not give that there but you might give it 30 yards further up the field. So all that sort of stuff is really important, and it's probably like an education piece that has actually been missed. Certainly at the beginning of my career, we never had any kind of consultation or chat with any referees, and it was you got to the field at the weekend and then they're doing things that you don't quite understand. So actually I think it's a really, really important part. And let's be honest, does everybody understand all of every law in a rugby team? I'd argue not. So that having somebody actually in the camp rather than you having to go and potentially research that yourself is really, really valuable.
I think as well, like for me, it's always good for me to learn as well. Like I go in and the girls will be trying something new, or like I'm in with Glasgow tomorrow, and it forces me to sharpen up on things. Like you said, if players are asking you questions, you really get put on the spot to kind of know your stuff. So it forces me to kind of keep up to speed with everything. And if they've got new moves that they're like, what's your opinion as a referee on this? Like, would we get away with it or would we not? Then, it's always challenging, and it encourages me to keep learning, which I think is good.
Now, I have to ask you, there have been incidents in certain referees' careers that have led to people literally changing the course of what they were doing. Wayne Barnes spoke really vulnerably about the way that public abuse took off after Rassie Erasmus had a go in the November Test series. You have had an actual coach. Tell us about your experience with the PO assistant coach and the verbal abuse that you took and the suspension that he got. I think 5 weeks suspended and a suspended fine of €25,000. That's a really, that is a serious level of the game signalling that this isn't okay. Is that something that you dealt with quite easily, or did it take you a while to process that sort of attack?
Yeah, when I came back from World Cup, I probably was still quite mentally fatigued, and then everything kind of happened in Po, and stuff like that probably does make you question. Like sometimes you're like, why am I doing this? Like you're away every weekend. Especially when you get to like a certain level, you travel pretty much every single weekend away from home, and it was not a nice experience. I obviously I was verbally abused. My colleague at the time was, it was almost like a physical misconduct, where the head coach also got 20 weeks reduced to 10. So in that situation, it's not good for the game. It's quite an ugly scene. And it's good that EPCR, the European League, took it so seriously, because I think if it continues, there's an article, I think, a couple of weeks ago that says eventually you never end up with the best referees staying around. You end up with the ones that can handle the abuse or have the kind of thickest skin, and it shouldn't be like that. There's no doubt that you are critiqued, but I think when that turns into physical or derogatory language, then I think there's a line, and it should be pushed back on.
I mean, it's one thing for people on social media, like the faceless masses or the Helga in the crowd. It's a completely different thing when it's when it's a coach.
Yeah, and I think that's the first time that's kind of happened to me. The first time I ever kind of refereed in France, the security come onto the pitch, and I thought it was a joke. I genuinely thought it was a joke. But the security came onto the field in that situation as well, and we were kind of ushered off, and then we were escorted to our car. So yeah, it was a bit of an eye-opening experience, and hopefully no kind of match official, player, coach, whoever it may be, has to kind of experience again.
I don't want to end our conversation on this note because it is, I feel like that is an outlier. What do you get out of your job that you really love and you really enjoy? Because unfortunately, when we talk about referees, we talk about how hard your job is, how difficult it is, how much grey there is, how careful you have to be about this, how sometimes you're the person giving the bad news. You have a red card, sorry, your game's over. What is it that makes it worth it?
I think most of the time for me there's actually so much enjoyment in trying to give something back to the game and trying to give something to the game that you're refereeing, and just actually when 30 players are able to do their thing. For me, I'm there to facilitate how good these athletes are out on that pitch, be it men, women, like the under-20s, whoever it may be. And when they play a magnificent game that I can be a part of, for me, that's fantastic. And when people aren't talking about you after the game, that's even better. And I've now been able to, travel the world. I've made some amazing friends. And if I wasn't in rugby and I wasn't in refereeing, God, this would not be my life, So I've been able to, completely change my outlook on things because of this sport, which I'll be forever grateful for.
When you guys are done doing the match officiating and you've just been through like a massive high pressure experience where, the earpiece in your ear has been blasting your brain out and the TMO didn't have the right replays to show you and the screen wasn't functioning, or a swarm of bees attacked the pitch, or you had Mo there. And it's all done and dusted, and you've done your hot review and everything's over. How much do you guys need to just woo-saw at the end of that? How does that look? Do you guys have your own fines meetings?
We did a fines, during World Cup.
Stop.
Yeah.
Give us the detail.
Oh, and you can imagine who headed it up.
Sarah Cox.
Sarah Cox. So yeah, there's fines when we're in big competitions, but afterwards you probably have a few drinks and just try and decompress a little bit, because like you said, it can be intense out there for 80 minutes. So as weird as it is and as weird as people think refs are, it's probably very similar. You go for some food, have a few drinks, have a few laughs, and then either go to bed or hit the dance floor.
Please, can we have the most memorable fine?
Most memorable fine.
You don't have to say who it is, just what the fine was.
Just give us the fine. We'll pick up the rest.
We'll know. Yeah.
So we obviously arrived a week early so that everyone could get over COVID down in New Zealand. And one of the first sort of formal official days we had team photos. Then we had individual World Rugby press stuff. And then we were going out for some team building stuff. And 2 members of our team, we had to get up we were at 7 a.m. for our photos, and 2 of our members rocked in at 6:30. And my gosh, those World Rugby photos were fantastic.
We don't even need the names. Who has got glassy eyes? Who looks a right mess?
That's so good.
Amazing.
So basically, this is the only one I've got for Hollie. But so last Six Nations, we were away in France. Was it the Bayonne one you referenced earlier?
Yeah.
I can't remember where it was. Six Nations decider, last game of the tournament, both teams unbeaten in the tournament. Sarah Hunter cracked her rib in the Ireland game that we played the week before. So she's out with us, but she's not captain in the squad. So I get the big call up. So I'm captain that day. Hollie's reffing. So as is tradition, at whatever time you go for the coin toss. So myself, I think Hermes, captain, and Hollie. And it's a big affair now. You're stood behind all the advertising boardings. There's a camera in your face. It's proper job. Hollie goes to flick this coin, right? And it is what only can be described, we'd say, in the rugby world as an absolute potato. She goes to flick it and it doesn't move. It just waddles its way up and waddles its way back down, floating. No spin, nothing. It hits the ground and then probably rotates. And I think I was calling, so I said whatever I said. I lost the coin toss, but I cannot tell you how much resolve it took for me to keep my shit together, to not absolutely lose it, because this coin was just a complete potato. It was one of the
Do
funniest
you know when
things.
you can tell someone was like, she was like shaking next to me, like she was trying to hold in this laughter. She was like shaking, and I was like, oh God, this is on TV and everything. And I was like, Tatty has just hit the floor.
It was so good. But actually, I think it broke the ice for me that day because it was obviously a huge occasion, captaining the girls, which I'm not necessarily used to doing. And then that happened, and I was like, I think it's going to be fine. So thank you for that.
Turns out Hollie is also just a person.
Exactly.
Humanise. There we are.
Do you practice the coin toss now, or have you got it down?
To be fair, I thought I had it down before then, and then they gave me this absolute ginormous heavy thing for doing the final. I was like, what is this? I tried to flip it, and it literally just, yeah.
I honestly, it takes way more skill to do what you did than it does flip it, so I would claim it, because that is some serious centre of gravity stuff. That is.
Mate, also, sorry, if it wasn't rotating, how did you lose the coin toss?
Well, it hit the ground, Mo. But yeah, I did lose it. Never mind.
I'm playing. Sorry, it's
All
hard.
sides. Yeah, come on.
It's the pressure of that as well.
You're supposed to be the person who bigs her up, remember? That's how this works.
Elma, we've had 3 what are we on now? 4 or 5 podcasts. Every single time Scazzy takes little digs. Look at her laughing away.
Mo called me the other day.
Here we go.
She was like, we were just chatting about stuff.
Here she is.
She's like, Scaz, did you bring me on the podcast just so you could rip into somebody? So no, mate, it's for your valuable insight, you know, your coaching philosophy, the lot.
Your coaching philosophy is the key to all of this.
Oh, dear.
I'm going to find my level 3 book and find out what it actually was, because that was what we were like crying about before you logged on, by the way, Hollie, because they were like, I can't believe you teed yourself up about your coaching philosophy and didn't even know it.
Like blank.
It was literally the only thing I added the whole podcast. It wasn't even anything. Outrageous.
Okay, well, Hollie Davidson, thank you so much for joining us. It's been so interesting, just, taking notes on how to manage anxiety for me. That's certainly a learning. Mo has just learned so many things to be upset about next time there's a difficult decision that needs to be made.
Not even, just to like chill about. I'm revolutionised.
Scaz, anything any take-homes, any notes from today? Anything useful come out of this?
Be nicer to Mo so she doesn't leave.
That's a really good one.
It's not going to happen, is it? But
I was going to say we might have to do quite a lot of reprogramming on that topic, but we're going to do our very best. Hollie, thank you so much for joining us. Where are you next?
I go into the under-20s, so I do Ireland, Italy, Ireland, and England, France.
Ooh, they've been going well.
Yes.
That'll be fun. They throw the ball around, these boys do. I've been loving the under-20s, to be fair.
Yeah, it's been very good, so hopefully they go okay.
Nice.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Hollie Davidson. Thank you for joining us, Mo Hunt, who's been up since 6:30 coaching around the clock, as she does, 24 hours a day, and Scaz for joining us in her beautiful hoodie that matches the one that Hollie is wearing. It's always really important to match with our friends. We've been The Good, The Scaz and The Rugby, a folding pocket production produced by Sharik Gallen, brought to you by our friends at Vodafone. Check you next time. Bye.